Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay with us as the Suns get set to shine.
Here's Perry, to Hurd. Here's the jump shot.
Jumps to Marley, a long three. He got it! He got it! Into Booker. Here's the three. Suzanne! Another Sir Charles, and he flies in for a wham, bam, slam. Whammo time! He got it! Suzanne! Oh, brother!
Welcome to the 7 Seconds or Less podcast. This is a podcast about the NBA generally and the Phoenix Suns specifically. My name is Max McCulley. I am one of your hosts, your other hosts. His name is David Nash, and he joins me right now. David, we just watched the 2018 NBA draft. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty pumped, Max. I feel a little bit different to how I did maybe halfway through the draft, but
oh man,
it threw some curveballs at us. And
when Gambo, who by the way did not exactly shower himself in glory tonight, I would say.
I've been negative about Gambo in various forums for a while. I think I can be pretty safe that he doesn't listen to our podcast. So
yeah, no, there's no way he listens to our podcast.
I'm just gonna say that, and I tweeted this. He had an absolute nightmare today, and he tried to run it back a little bit, but
anyway, around the time when he tweeted out that we were going to take Dante DiVincenzo, I was pretty bummed out, I would say, because I mentioned this before, but I like him fine. I like Dante. I didn't think he was a very good fit, but then the Suns did something completely out of nowhere, completely out of the blue, something no one ever predicted, and they went and got Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
Who is the exact opposite of Dante because he's a perfect fit.
He's an absolute perfect fit and a massive upgrade there. And when in the course of running it back, I thought Gambo actually made a decent point at least, because you kind of, I think a lot of Suns fans will look at this maybe into the future at looking at Smith, versus Bridges plus that pick that got thrown in, which we'll get into a little bit later. But essentially it looks like the Suns were going to take DiVincenzo at 16. So really it's going to be about how Bridges compares to DiVincenzo here. And then even more interestingly, I thought the Bucks taking him the very next pick after was very intriguing. So, we all thought that maybe the Suns were reaching a little bit at 16, but they obviously knew that was the place, if they wanted him, that they needed to take him. So
and I'll tell you what, he's a much better fit in Milwaukee than he would have been here, I think.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I definitely can agree with that, and we'll see how he pans out. I certainly don't hate him as a prospect, but I wasn't too hyped with that pick as Gambo leaked it. However, I did kind of wonder whether he was going a little bit early there, because I was watching the coverage, as I'm sure everyone else was, and we were still kind of 2 picks back, and whilst I'm sure he got some pretty good intel, anything can happen in the draft, and it certainly didn't feel like it was a Shams or a Woj type leak where the picks basically submitted and that they're getting that information and tweeting it out just before Adam Silver comes out.
No, it wasn't that.
It was very much a we think this is our guy, but there was still probably 5 to 10 minutes to play out, and as we found out, a lot can happen in 5 to 10 minutes in the NBA draft.
Yeah, I don't want to kill Gambo too much. Gambo definitely heard from Suns executives that they were planning on taking Dante DiVincenzo, and then it sounds like what the story was that Philadelphia called Phoenix, was like, hey, we have Bridges, we want Zaire, we will give you Bridges for 16 and that 2021 Miami pick unprotected, and it basically put McDonough on the gun, and he made a quick call and decided to do the trade.
A very quick call, and
such a quick call.
I think one that they probably would have looked at. A lot of people have kind of made mention of the fact that it sounds like Philly are the ones that picked up the phone to the Suns, but let's not kid ourselves here. I think McDonough was pretty honest in his comments earlier, talking about the fact that the Suns would be calling around and looking at what trades they could make to trade up into the lottery. So I'm sure this was a conversation that had occurred previously. He wasn't totally blindsided by it, but it sounds like he literally had a minute maybe to say yes or no, and he pulled the trigger.
Something I also wondered too, and I actually just thought of this, so this is a half-baked idea. I wonder if this was something they talked about doing, but Philadelphia wanted to make sure Zaire was there, and the Suns kind of wanted to make sure someone didn't fall who they liked, so they weren't totally ready to make the trade yet. Once those principles were made and there, they were like, okay, this is the trade we talked about. Maybe something like that happened.
I think you're pretty bang on the money there, because everything pre-draft, and we spoke about it in a couple of pods earlier, is either Knox or Smith seem to be Philly's guys. They probably didn't expect Bridges maybe to be there at 10, and they've taken him. I absolutely feel for the kid and his mum, because they looked absolutely pumped to be going to Philadelphia. But I'm very excited to have him in Arizona instead.
Yeah, and I was happy to see that he tweeted out something nice, like "Let's go, son," or something like that, something nice. So, whatever. He's happy. He got drafted to the NBA. He didn't know where he was going to go tonight, so I'm sure he's plenty happy to come to the Suns. We should probably talk about DeAndre Ayton.
We should. I don't want to get criticized for running over that. I guess we were all prepared for that happening. Interestingly, it sounds like the Suns have maybe been prepared for at least a week for that to happen. Sounds like last Friday they met up with Ayton again. And that's essentially where the call was made, and maybe even Ayton was told at that point that he was the Suns guy. So
yeah, I saw that they met last Friday. I also saw something that they told Ayton weeks ago. It sounds like he knew even before that press conference where he said he was going to be the number one pick. I think he may have known by then.
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance of that. As we know, anything can happen, and the Suns were probably very careful about maybe there was a deal in place, and that's why they still worked out all the other top guys just to make sure they had everything at their disposal in case something came their way. But yeah, I think he was very much their guy. We've spoken at length about that in the last episode or the episode before that, the Ayton pod. So I don't think we need to touch on that too much, other than the fact that obviously still a little bit disappointed that the Suns don't end up with someone like Luka Doncic, who we both had at the top of our boards. But I'm not decompressing that in this 24 hours. I'd kind of already come to terms with the fact that wasn't going to happen. And, we'd already said that there was a very, very small percentage chance of that happening today. So I'm excited for Ayton. I'm ready to get this going with him and, dive into, how he and the other guys kind of fit with the Suns in this offseason.
Yeah, we'll get into Doncic soon. I do want to just say that I'm with you. I'm ready for the Ayton era. I'm pretty excited. I've said this a few times that it's been a long time since the Suns have had consistently the biggest, most athletic player on the floor. That's just not something the Suns have had, and it's going to be nice to have that in most games next season. I think Ayton's going to have a bit of a target on his back, which should be interesting. It's worth pointing out that Joel Embiid decided to take a shot at Ayton on Twitter.
Yep.
Shortly after he was drafted.
Yep.
I don't remember the exact tweet. It was something like, "Stop comparing me to DeAndre Ayton. I play defense," right?
Yeah, which obviously he was watching the ESPN telecast where they threw a couple of comparisons out there to him, and maybe he's threatened a little bit, but it'll be nice to have a guy in that fight and someone to root for. And as you say, a big 7-footer as talented as Ayton is, we're going to be in a lot of games next year purely on his shoulders and some of the things that he's going to be able to do. And again, don't want to touch on it too much, but I'm just really excited for the gravity that he's going to possess out there for Phoenix. And guys, you can really understand why guys like Booker and that really wanted to add him at the top, because he is going to create extra shots. He's going to create extra space, and hopefully, as things that we talked about him improving on, he'll create extra components to the Phoenix team that we're not too sure about just yet.
Yep, and I got even higher on Ayton when we took Bridges, because now we can surround Ayton with just a full shooting lineup, minus TJ, which we'll get to probably not in this podcast, but at some point they're probably going to have to move on for TJ, right? We're going to have that conversation at some point.
Yeah, I think that's coming. McDonough's comments after the draft kind of tried to, maybe skip over that a little bit, but I think that's a that's a logjam that's going to come to a head at some point, and the Suns will probably have to do something about.
Yeah, it's time to surround Ayton and Booker with shooters and defenders. That's what they need to do. The rest of that team is shooters and defenders. And hopefully Josh Jackson gets their shooting. Josh Jackson's enough of a athlete and has the star potential where he gets to pass on that a little bit, but everybody else needs to be able to shoot and defend.
Yeah, interesting video just quickly on Josh Jackson, where he appeared to, maybe lose the hitch a little bit more even in his jump shot. So, that's an exciting development.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, that's been going around Twitter and Reddit. I would recommend checking that out. There was like a video, it's like a short video, it's like 20 seconds long, of Josh Jackson shooting a couple like mid-range sort of jumpers, and his jumper looks a lot smoother.
Yeah, I want to say it was from maybe Tyler Eulis's Instagram account or something like that. Yeah. So go check that out if you can find it, Suns fans.
Okay, let's get into Doncic now, because that's the other, I would say, big storyline for this podcast, but also for the NBA as a community.
And that was big. I mean, it didn't come
huge.
out of nowhere like the Bridges one, because there was kind of rumors.
You knew someone was moving up, right? Someone was getting to that top five.
Yeah,
I found it already in the top five.
I found it funny that the months and weeks leading up to the draft, it was kind of a lot of Doncic bashing. And it kind of makes a lot of sense now, all those rumors and things that were leaked. I think there was clearly 2 or 3 teams that really wanted to move up for Doncic, and they were hoping he was going to fall, as far as possible, that they didn't even have to move up, or that the cost to move up was far less. And I'm sure Dallas is pretty damn happy with what it cost them to move up and get their guy. It was, really not much at all.
It was a top 5 protected pick next year, right?
Yeah, I think it goes top 5 protected, top 5 protected, maybe top 3 protected, and then unprotected. So,
well, I don't think any of that crap's going to matter. They're not going to be in the bottom 5 of the next year. They're going to be a decent team next year. I think you're right. I think they're going to be a really good team, and I'm happy for Doncic. I think we discussed earlier it was, if he wasn't coming to Phoenix, it'd be really nice to see him go to even a place like Boston or Philly. Just a really great fit for him. And I think Dallas is kind of in that group. It's a romantic thing with Dirk as well, who might be in his last season next year. A bit of a handover there. And not much cost at all. Although I did see the initial offer from Dallas was maybe just adding pick 33 or something to move up from 5 to 3, which I'm not surprised that Atlanta knocked that one back. It seemed like the deal was going to happen, because I don't think Atlanta wanted to pick at 3. But, yeah, it wasn't going to happen for that price. I'm fascinated by this fit, because initially when I first thought about it, I was like, I don't know if Dennis Smith Jr. and Luka Doncic makes a ton of sense. It's not the best defensive fit, and both of them probably better with the ball in their hands, although I think Luka's a good off-ball player.
Yep.
But the more I think about it, like, Luka's kind of been at his best when he's had a ball-dominant guard with him, right? Like in Eurobasket with Goran Dragic, I think that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget or maybe just don't know that, Goran won the MVP of that tournament. It wasn't Luka's, it was one of the trophies that Luka didn't win in the last 18 months. But I think those two worked ridiculously well together. And Luka's not the type of guy that's just going to own an offense himself. And I did see that Dennis Smith tweeted his approval at the pick, so I don't think there's any worries there. Good. About him being threatened for his job. I think he fully understands how those two can work together.
Yeah, I think the plan is to build around both of them, and it's going to be really damn fun to watch them. I'm excited. The first game of Summer League's Phoenix Dallas. I hope Luka plays. There's been some talk that he won't, but it'd be really fun if he does.
Yeah, I did see. I don't want to be held to it by you, Max, but I think there was something from Carlisle about limited summer league action for Doncic. Whether it was none, I can't remember, but it was definitely saying that he needs a break. So we may not see Luka.
Well, for Vegas. My own self-interest, I hope he just plays that one first game, because I'll be there for that. So.
And it would be pretty cool to see him go up against Phoenix after
against
everything.
Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, exactly. Bring it on. We've got our guys now, like we spoke about for so long. It was theory for so long, and now it's in practice, and we can get behind these guys. Luka's the enemy.
Screw that guy, man. I've never actually liked him.
Atlanta's interesting, though. I think you're
Yes.
right. I think they didn't want to pick at 3. They clearly had their eyes on Young and maybe thought it was going to be perceived as a bit of a reach to take him there. So they made the most of it and picked up an extra asset along the way.
And I think it might have been even a little more complicated than that. I don't remember exactly how it went, but there was some sort of split between the basketball front office people, the coaching people, and then the ownership on who they wanted. And they kind of like came to a consensus and all sort of agreed on Trae Young, who none of them actually really wanted. Is that the understanding you had?
Yeah, I did see that. I think at the end of the day, Schlenk is getting his guy. From what I've read, but there definitely seemed to be some indecision amongst the different parts of the hierarchy there in Atlanta. But it was probably around picking at 3 more than not wanting Young or them not agreeing on Young. So yeah, they obviously found a bit of a middle ground there. And I noted on Twitter earlier, I think it's kind of funny Schlenk's going with Warriors light here with Trae Young and then Herter at their next pick at 19, and
I love it.
And then they grabbed Spellman at 30, who's a big from Villanova, not quite your Draymond, definitely not a defensive versatile guy.
Better
like Draymond,
shooter though.
but, better shooter, which is if Draymond was a better shooter, they'd be even more impossible to beat. So yeah, interesting that he's kind of maybe building version 2 over in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I thought what Atlanta did was really fun. I'm a big Trae Young fan. I'm glad Trae Young kind of gets his own team, too. Although they're going to have to do something with Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, he's that's a worse situation than TJ Warren for Phoenix.
Yeah, it is.
Because
that's untenable.
That's untenable. He's TJ's a pretty quiet guy. Schroeder's not.
No.
And yeah, there's just no way to work those two together. Whereas at least TJ, it wouldn't be ideal, but you could maybe work some things out in the short term. Whereas, yeah, the writing's on the wall with that one, I think.
Yeah, if he's on the roster next season, I will be very surprised. All right, should we move on to the lottery? Kind of go through some of these teams.
Yeah, I mean we've touched on Ayton and Doncic and Young there.
Let's go to Bagley. Let's do Bagley. What do you think? Because Sacramento got a lot of criticism for this pick.
They did. It was no surprise to me. If someone, he's one of the predictions that I got right. There's not too many of them, but he's definitely one of them. I think it really just stems from what I discussed on our predictions pod last time around. Is the Kings have gone through such a tough time, and people not wanting to go there. It's very easy to see them falling in love with prospects that are open to working out and open to going to Sacramento. So 2, 3, 4, all those prospects are pretty bunched together there for us. I thought when we were kind of mocking things out, and Bagley clearly put himself at the top of the pile purely because of his want to go to Sacramento, or maybe it was just his want to go pick 2. But
do you buy that Sacramento's been targeting him for over a month, and they had him number 1 on their board, and they were just waiting for the Suns to confirm Ayton before they release that information?
I don't buy that. No,
I don't either.
I think I buy that they wanted to pick the guy that was talented enough to be picked there, but that certainly wants to come, or showed that he wants to come to the Kings. I think it was more about that than anything for me.
That seems to matter to them a lot.
It definitely matters to them. And one thing I'm really excited about, which we touched on last time too, is there's a bit of an Ayton Bagley rivalry there now within the division, and that's going to be really interesting to watch. But
we're going to see that at Summer League too. That's going to be
we are going to see that at Summer League. Yeah, I mean they might play him at the 4 to start with, but I think he's definitely a 5 going forward as he fills out, and
they'll still run into each other a little bit.
They'll still run into each other a bit. Maybe we'll play Ayton at the 4.
Oh God, no.
that might be how they match up on each other at Summer League. But
speaking of our Summer League team, that's going to be fun. So I imagine Okobo will play in it, right? Because we'll get to Okobo later, but he's coming over next year, so I don't see why he wouldn't play on the Summer League team.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to be running the show.
So is it Okobo, Davon Reed, Jackson? I don't know if Bender's going to play or not. Maybe Bender and then Ayton. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think we'll see Bender play. I think we'll see Jackson play the Booker role of a couple of years ago, where he maybe just plays 1 or 2 games and then shuts it down. But yeah, it's going to be a fun team, I think, and they might add some more undrafted guys and stuff to that, and I think we'll be one of the favourites again, particularly with our new big man in the middle.
Yeah, we should be. Quickly on Bagley, I wasn't as low on Bagley as some people on, I guess, especially on Draft Twitter, where I think Bagley's going to be pretty damn good on offense. I think his defense is going to be a complete disaster, at least at first. Maybe he'll get better. Yep. I'm excited to watch him and De'Aaron Fox play together because that's incredible athleticism. It's going to be eye-popping, honestly.
Yep.
Yeah, he's going to have good guards, I think, with Fox and Bogdan. I like it. I think it's going to be fun. I'm not as low on it as others are. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think they definitely got killed a little bit today after the pick, and less so than the Suns, just because so many people had Ayton at the top. But there's a lot of people saying that one could really haunt the Kings if either Doncic or Jackson or even Young kind of jumps Bagley in the first couple of years. They might really regret that. But I can see why they did it. They have holes pretty much everywhere except for maybe Fox, but even then, if there was a point guard worth taking, they probably would have taken him. But they were open to anyone, I think, at that pick, and probably just fell in love with Bagley because as I noted, he was the only one that came in to work out for them.
That can matter sometimes, man.
I think it does.
Okay, so let's skip over 3 because we sort of talked about that already. Let's go to Memphis at 4.
Yeah, I love this.
So do I. There was some talk before the draft that Jaren Jackson didn't want to go there, but it seems like he was sort of, talked into it. I don't really know what happened, but everything was smooth over, and he is now a Memphis Grizzly.
Yeah, I read it. JB Bickerstaff, of all people, maybe earned his paycheck there. So He seems to be the one that kind of sold the vision to Jackson, and he gave up his medical records and things after initially holding them back. So it's interesting how that plays out. I did notice one of the few good points that Bobby Marks made on the coverage today. Again, I don't think I need to worry about Bobby listening to our pod, but he noted that at some point it would be really nice if you couldn't do this anymore, and medicals just go to all 30 teams, and I definitely agree with that. I don't like the way that agents can kind of manipulate the draft, and I would go an extra mile and make everyone who wants to enter their name in the draft go to the combine, and at least do the measurables. Probably don't have to do the testing if you're carrying an injury or something. But
I may agree with you on medicals. I don't think that they shouldn't force them to interview or work out with everybody. I don't think, but I probably agree with medicals.
Okay, yeah, I don't think they have to interview or work out, but it's very frustrating to me to look up or try and look up a guy's wingspan or something, and he was the one guy that refused to get measured for whatever stupid reason. So
well, we still don't know what Ayton's official wingspan. He was at the combine, right? He could be a T-Rex arms for all we know.
I think we're okay there. I don't think he's going to be like Svi Mihaluk from Kansas, who has the -3 wingspan.
I think that was the first time anyone's ever used Ayton and Svi Mihaluk in a sentence together.
Yeah, I'm going to try and work him into the pod somehow. But again, he's a Laker now, so we hate him. We hate him a lot.
Real quick on Jaren Jackson, I really like it in Memphis because he's obviously going to be the center of the future, and Marc Gasol might be toasted anyway, so he might be the center now. But assuming Marc Gasol's not toast, I think those two can kind of play together maybe because they're both sort of versatile on offense at least, right? You can kind of space the floor with both of them.
Yeah, I think so, and I don't. Maybe with Jaren Jackson, we won't see Gasol kind of float out to the 3-point line maybe as much as he did last year. But I think year one, Jaren Jackson is going to be, the type of power forward that the Grizzlies have been looking for since, moving away from Zebo. So, I could see him starting at the 4 and eventually maybe taking over at the 5 from Gasol when he departs Memphis, sadly, one day.
It will be sad, won't it? But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a nice one. I like that pick. It's kind of a feel-good pick because it seemed like Memphis was going to trade the pick all week, and it's nice for them to get a marriage with a player who I think is really good. I had him second on my board, so
Yeah, and then we'll wake up in the morning before we release this pod, and he'll be traded somewhere.
Probably Boston. Although Boston got their center. I don't know if we'll touch on that later or not, but somehow Robert Williams fell to Boston.
Yes.
That was insanity. All right, let's go to 6. We'll skip Dallas. They're the winners. Bamba to Orlando. So I like this a lot. I think that Bamba and Isaac might blot out the Sun. That's ridiculous on defense. I don't know who the hell's going to score on that team, but they're certainly not going to get scored on. But do you think this spells the end of the Aaron Gordon era in Orlando?
I think it definitely does, and they've got problems past that with both Vujicic and Bismack Biyombo still on the roster too. So yeah, I think there's still some work to do there for Hammond, but I definitely chuckled to myself after the Atlanta-Dallas trade went through, because I think we spoke for so long about how Hammond was going to pick his normal type here at 6 because we expected Bamba to be gone, and then that trade dropped and it was looking like Young was going to be the pick at 5, and of course Bamba just falls straight into Hammond's lap. That I don't think he was going to be ever able to refuse that. So
how was Hammond not going to drop to 7'10" wingspan?
Exactly. So yeah, him and Isaac are going to be an interesting pairing going forward. But they've got some more short-term issues there, and I think I'd be pretty confident in saying that Aaron Gordon is out of there, but you never know. It's going to take someone to probably max him.
Something close, at least.
Or at least something close, yeah. But yeah, one to watch there, Orlando, definitely. Not the sexiest team going around, or the biggest fan base, particularly where I'm from. But one that I'll definitely be watching just from a roster construction standpoint.
My early predictions: Aaron Gordon to Indiana. Maybe we'll do a full free agency thing, but that's where I'm going with that.
That's interesting. I like that.
Okay, so let's go to number 7. The Bulls took. I thought this was a sneaky good pick, a sleeper pick. The Bulls got Wendell Carter Jr. Love it. I think it's perfect with Larry Markkinen.
Yeah, I think that fit is amazing. I don't think we need to touch on it too much past that. They've got their troubles of their own at the wings and guards, but and another restricted free agent in Levine that they have to decide whether to pay or not, kind of like Gordon. But Carter Laurie is just seems like the perfect match to me, and really exciting to see that. And I touched on earlier, I think Carter's seems such a Bulls pick. So I was happy to see that one slotted in there.
They can both shoot. I think it's going to be nice on offense. Wendell Carter can protect the rim. Larry can't really do that. I think it's going to be nice. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Should we do Cleveland? This is an interesting one. Cleveland took Colin Sexton.
First kind of major shock of the draft, I suppose, outside of the Atlanta Mavs trade.
Yeah. Even this one wasn't a giant shock, though, because, I thought Cleveland was sending smoke signals with this, but they were telegraphing this pick, kind of.
That's very true. Yeah, you're right. Maybe we just didn't believe them when they were telling the truth. But, you look at some of those names that come after Sexton, and the initial obvious reaction is to kind of look at LeBron's leaked comments about not wanting to be on the ball as much, and then kind of going, let's find the most ball dominant guard in the draft. Right. That's kind of where I'm kind of seeing things. But
he also actually referred to Colin Sexton by name. Oh, there were reports that his group or something liked him, right?
That's right. Yeah, you're right. I always love those. The LeBron James camp likes right. Colin Sexton.
I'm sure his camp likes someone other than he likes.
Yeah.
We know what that means.
So, yeah, interesting pick. It's kind of, we've made the Sexton-Bledsoe comparison before, and they even made it on ESPN when Sexton was picked.
Oh, did they?
And,
we didn't sound on loud.
The Bledsoe LBJ connection was always there for a long, long time. So maybe he's finally getting that with someone like Sexton.
Is Colin Sexton going to the Rich Paul agency?
The camp. He might already be in the camp. Yeah, let's wait and see.
Okay, next is the Sixers. Should we just talk about Zaire here? I guess it makes sense.
No, you've skipped the Knicks there.
Oh, I did. Sorry. The Knicks, 9. My bad. Kevin Knox. Sorry. Kevin Knox, I don't like him very much, but theoretically he's an excellent fit with Porzingis as a small ball forward with the 5, I think.
I agree. All I'm going to say on Knox, because I didn't scout him too much because I just didn't think he would be in play for Phoenix at either pick, is he picked himself earlier today to the Knicks.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Go check it out online. There's a video of an interview that he did where he essentially refers to the Knicks as we before correcting himself to they. So that was a Telegraph one that we saw coming kind of hours before the draft.
Yeah, we'll see. To me, it's one of the bigger boom bust picks in the draft. Like he couldn't really play basketball last year, but he's got so much talent. He can really shoot. From everything you hear about him, he's a really good kid. So I think there's some room for hope there for Knicks fans.
Yeah, and another Knicks player that got booed. So
yeah, I know that's always a good sign for Knicks players. Actually,
he actually took Porzingis' example there and kind of embraced it and said he was happy for it, and he'll turn the fans around. So
that's the right attitude to have. I like that.
I'll be rooting for him a little bit, as much as I hate rooting for the Knicks.
Yeah, same. Okay, let's do Zaire at 10 now. I won't jump anymore. I think here's my hot. This isn't even a hot take, but the Philadelphia 76ers won the trade with the Suns tonight. I think value-wise, just pure looking at assets.
I noted earlier as well that it was an overpay from the Suns.
It was.
So yeah, I mean, when neither guys has played a minute of NBA basketball yet, we can't really talk about who has won the trade. But yeah, I think from a pure asset point of view and what we discussed last pod about how much we valued that Miami pick, I think you can very easily say before a ball is bounced that at least the Suns reached and overpaid in this trade.
You would have liked to have seen the Suns get some kind of light protection on this, maybe like a top 3.
Yeah, I think I messaged you straight away as soon as the trade news kind of came through and said, I'm pretty sure we can protect that. And
they changed the rule not too long ago, I think for the last CBA, that you can now protect other teams' picks that you have.
Exactly. I think, mate, I think I saw a lot of people shout McD down when it kind of came out that it wasn't protected and that they could have. I think we're being silly if we don't think that McD didn't try. I think that would have been his first question back to the Sixers. But I think we have to note that obviously that's a time-sensitive issue when you're on the clock like that. And also when you're protecting somebody else's pick, it wouldn't have been able to obviously be a Miami pick after a protection came in place. So it would have had to be that they were then bringing in a Suns pick to replace it the following year or something like that. So
or a pick swap or something. It could be complicated.
Yeah, exactly. So just probably far too complicated to go into on the spot like that, and the Sixers had all the leverage from that respect. So I think he definitely would have tried, but unfortunately couldn't put any kind of protection on even top one probably would have been nice. But the other thing I'll just say is I think it really shows what it would have cost to go higher in the draft. I think us as Suns fans all week or all month on Twitter we're talking about how we could maybe jump up and get Ayton and Doncic and please everyone sort of thing. But you look at what we had to pay just to go from 16 to 10. And I think McDonough was kind of right in what he said in certain interviews is I'm not sure we would have got much higher than 10 if that's what it cost us eventually to get Bridges.
Yeah, and to go back to our fallen friend Gambo, he was saying on the radio before the draft that it seemed like the prices were surprising the Suns with how high they were. I think that the teams really valued the players in this draft, and it was just more than it usually is in most drafts to move up.
Yeah, and I think we see that in the fact that we kind of got 3 bigger trades in the first round when maybe the kind of general NBA world was maybe expecting a couple more than that. I think it was going to be very hard to move around. It's all good in theory on Twitter, but when it comes to practice, it's not all that easy.
We also, this is sort of on topic, but sort of on topic. We got no current player trades, which I thought was interesting.
Very interesting. There was the Bazemore Wes Matthews talk early on with the Atlanta Dallas deal, but other than that, yeah, we didn't really see any names thrown around at all. Fareed tweeted that it was going to be an interesting night for him, so I think he saw what people had been saying about his contract, but yeah, no existing players thrown in any trades. So yeah, very interesting note there.
Let's very, very quickly talk about Zaire Smith in Philly. I kind of really love it. Him in the break with Ben Simmons is going to be super fun.
Yep.
Philly did really well tonight. They also, we can go ahead and jump to this. We're not going to go through the whole first round, so I can go ahead and say they took my guy Landry Shamet.
And they
go ahead.
They almost took my guy Kyrie Thomas before trading him away. I think someone, I can't remember who it was now, reached out to us both on Twitter and said the Sixers were kind of having the kind of draft that you and I wanted the Suns to have almost.
Do you think they listen?
Maybe maybe we don't have Gambo or Bobby Marks, but maybe Brett Brown or someone is a listener to the 7 Seconds or Less podcast.
Or maybe it was Brian Colangelo before he got thrown out and then he started passing it in. People thought I was going to be really bummed out about this. I was a little bummed out. I wanted Landry on the Suns, but I'm actually happy about it because I want to be right, and I think the Sixers give Landry Shamet a very good chance to be a good player.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting note. We kind of touched on it with Doncic earlier. You fall in love with guys, doing draft research. There's just no way around that, and there's no shame in that. And outside of them coming to your team, if you think it's a good fit, you kind of do want them to go somewhere that they're going to succeed. And probably second to that, it's nice when you're not at your pick and your team passes up on them and then they're taken after. So the Sixers kind of took Shamet before the Suns had a chance. So we'll never quite know whether the Suns would have gone there with Shamet. Like maybe we know that they obviously passed up Thomas and Melton and a few others for Okobo, but we'll never know about Shamet.
Yeah, which we'll get to Okobo after the lottery. But I like that pick just as a preview. Okay, let's go to number 11, Charlotte. This is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because they started doing some things.
Charlotte's an interesting one. I guess they drafted SGA.
Yes.
And then ended up with Miles Bridges, which is an interesting choice. Zach Lowe recently commented that the Charlotte war room can be a bit chaotic. So it'd be interesting there whether Kupchak was high on Miles Bridges or whether it was somebody else overriding him. What do you think?
He seems like a Michael Jordan player to me.
He does. He does.
But listen, that's a great pick. I mean, Miles Bridges is awesome, so I think they did really well. So whoever was doing the overriding, I think did some good overriding.
Yeah, and it's doesn't spell the end of Kemba Walker just yet if it was a pick like SGA. So yeah, interesting. So should we move on to the Clippers then with
Yeah, let's go to the Clippers. I'm gonna go ahead and start. I did not like what they did.
I did not either. I had a little more trust in them and Jerry West going into this draft. I thought they were going to, and maybe they did try, but I thought they were going to package and move up and grab someone or kind of grab two guys that I was high on. I really expected them to take almost two guys that I kind of wanted at 16 for the Suns and ruin our plans, but I definitely didn't have the Suns taking Jerome Robinson, who I had at 34 on my board, so not very high on him at all, which is an interesting pick out of Boston. But I have spoken before about how much I love SGA, so interesting pick for them at that spot, and a little high versus where I had SGA on my overall board. But I thought it was an interesting combination of picks when they had those kind of that unique back-to-back pick where they could have, kind of picked two real foundational players, and the mix that they've gone with there with a point guard and a shooting guard is a little odd.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't get it. I'm not as high on SGA as you are, so that makes it even worse for me. And then Jerome Robinson, like, I guess he could fill it up a little bit. That dude's he's literally the worst defender in college basketball last year, right?
Correct.
I don't know. I don't get it. I'm gonna move on because I don't. Why didn't they take Robert Williams? This is the last thing I'm gonna ask. Why didn't they take Robert Williams?
Because they wanted to leave him for Boston later. But before we do move on, can we vote SGA as the best worst dresser of the draft, or does that go to Trae Young with his shorts?
It's really hard to beat Trae Young shorts, man.
Oh God!
But SGA was bad.
There was some interesting outfits there. I tweeted out a picture of the class before the draft started, just kind of noting it, how bland Doncic looked versus everyone else on stage.
I love Jaren Jackson. Jaren Jackson came out ready.
He did. He really did.
Okay. We're going to 14 now. Oh, so this is an interesting one. So here's where the slide finally stopped. Michael Porter Jr. was like sort of he's the every single draft has a guy like this, right? The guy who slides the whole time. Everyone's wondering when he's going to go. We had heard rumors for weeks now that all these teams were trying to maneuver to trade up. Today we even got one saying the Sixers were thinking about packaging Markelle Fultz with number 10 and number 26 to move up. Clearly all that was bullshit because he went past all those teams.
Yeah, you always wonder where those things are coming from. There's always one side motivated to do that, and now we've been and gone with the draft. I think it's pretty safe to say that most of that was coming from the agent player side in Porter's case.
So just talk about him in Denver. Offensively, it could be fun, I guess. I think it projects to be a complete and total disaster on defense, which that team's already a defensive disaster. Like, is your plan to play Jokic to the 5 and MPJ at the 4? Because you're not going to win in the playoffs doing that. You're just not.
Yeah, I think, I did really like it for Denver. I just thought it was the kind of move at 14 that they had to make. Obviously, if the medical's a complete red flag, you don't just pick a guy for the hell of it. But
right.
They were obviously comfortable enough after seeing them to at least take a shot. And I think we touched on Denver in an earlier pod of ours where we kind of talked about them needing that, wing 3-4 type, the new Wilson Chandler. So, if Porter can play next year, he'd definitely be an interesting fit. But yeah, I think going forward past the short term, there's definitely a concern there when he's playing more kind of starter minutes to fit him with Jokic and how that can be a winning team, particularly you've got probably Jamal Murray and a few other of their young pieces. Thank God for Gary Harris, who's and the defense that he plays. But an interesting fit and probably a gamble that Denver had to take, even though they probably could have picked a guy that plugged in and played a little more solid basketball for their hopeful playoff run next year. But they took the gamble.
Yeah, I mean, I probably should back off on that a little bit. Like, it's not like they traded up for him or anything like that. They took him at 14. I mean, they took a home run swing. That's fine.
Exactly. We touched on that. Privately with the Suns. It was kind of, I was fine with taking him at 16, but I was very scared that we're about, as he kept sliding, I was very scared we're about to, just get rid of an asset for the hell
I like it better for the Suns, though, because at least there's like a theoretical possibility of DeAndre Ayton playing defense.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know with Denver. We'll see. It's going to be fun. I mean, I think a lot of these teams got more fun to watch, so that's always nice.
And mostly in the West, which is interesting.
I know. Yeah, that's going to be... So I guess, besides Atlanta and Orlando, everything else is pretty much Western. I guess, there's a couple of East teams in there, but most of the star power went West.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more, just very briefly, about Mikal in Phoenix. And maybe we'll talk about Kobo now, too.
Yeah, let's kind of do them together. Why not?
Yeah, that makes sense. The reason why I like the Mikal thing so much, we mentioned a little earlier, we both think it was an overpay. But, and I was having this conversation a little earlier with some people, McD has always been someone who prioritized like asset value in a vacuum over team fit, I would say. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, definitely.
I guess the quintessential example of that being when he signed Isaiah Thomas to that contract that was a great value, but it ended up blowing up the entire team.
Yeah.
This was the exact opposite of that. This time he overpaid asset-wise, but he acquired someone who just makes so much sense. Like, remember, we were on that podcast with Kellen last weekend, Patrick Oxford's podcast, and all we talked about was how this team needs shooting and defense, man. That's like all we could freaking talk about. And they got the guy in the draft who is the surest bet to give you shooting and defense.
Exactly. And yeah, I think as you've already noted, McD, his eyes do light up in those scenarios, and he can tend to overpay, as we've noted in this case. And I'm kind of all for it, to be honest. I think it shows aggressiveness on his part, and it shows that the Suns are backing up their talk. They've spoken for a long time, whether it's at the draft or free agency, about how they're going to be aggressive. They're going to be aggressive, and fans and media alike who have criticised the Sun in recent past about what direction they're going in and whether they want to be a winning basketball team. You can't criticise this move. It may look bad in the future. It may look great, hopefully, for McD's sake, but he's on his own timeline here, and he's kind of pushed the chips in a little bit and got a top 10 player that, every GM says this, but, he thinks they valued a little higher than that, which, I kind of take as probably valuing him maybe around the 6 or 7 range, given who they worked out for the number 1 pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I keep thinking about that 2021 pick, and is that going to come back to bite us?
It might come back to bite the franchise, but we've noted before, I don't think it'll come back to bite McD, because he's either going to be here or he's not. So, this move, these moves don't come around too often, and he decided to pull the trigger on this one, and thank God we don't have to retire the McNinja nickname yet.
He's still a ninja.
Yeah, I kind of spoke about that on Twitter earlier during the draft. I was literally 5 seconds away from tweeting when the DiVincenzo news came out that he'd become crazily predictable with the Ayton pick and then the DiVincenzo pick that everyone kind of saw coming. But then he pulled a rabbit out of the hat, and long live the nickname.
Yeah, I think you were better to be disciplined than I was. I tweeted out something like, "This trap was awful," or something along those lines. Oh, I think I said the Suns draft blows. That was right before the McHale trade.
It was almost there. So yeah, I think we have to note that it was an overpay, but it was aggressive, and they walk away from the draft with, I'm sure, what they view as 2 top 10 picks, and what most people view as top 10 picks. Most people had McHale, somewhere in that top 10. So, as we touched on before, it costs to move up in a draft like this, and it just pushes the timeline forward a little bit. We could have held on to that pick. Miami, as much as I didn't want to believe it in the past when we still had that pick, is, it's going to be a free agent destination all the time, and Riley sure as hell is doing his best not to bottom out at any point. So sometimes if that's the asset that a team wants, and you want a guy and you want a deal, then you just got to go ahead and do it.
Yep, I think that's right. Ultimately, I'm happy with this. It honestly saved the night for me. I would have been bummed without the draft, so I'm not going to rue this, but we'll see if it comes back to bite us. I'm happy about it right now, though.
Yeah.
How about Okobo?
Okobo, I think you're higher on than me, so why don't you start on him?
So first of all, at 16 it would have been a reach, I think, a little bit. 31 it's great. He has a lot of upside. He's 6'3", French point guard, shoots left-handed, which I love. Love left-handed shooters.
It's just so nice watching a lefty stroke it, isn't it?
It really is, and I actually think it gives guys a bit of an advantage because not everyone in the regular season is paying attention to the scouting report, every nuance of it. So. But here's the thing. He's got the size. He has the potential to defend. He doesn't defend right now. He's got a nice looking jumper, a nice pull up. It's not perfect yet, but it's got potential. He's a tools guy.
He is a tools guy. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's probably the easiest way to wrap him up in a few words. I think maybe guys that haven't watched him too much look at his physical profile and kind of go, 6'3", big wingspan. That's the kind of guy that you want at point guard, and he can definitely develop into that. He's still young, but
Yep.
I think it's worth noting that I think he was like bottom 20% in the French league in defensive box plus minus. Shout out to Jacob Goldstein again, giving him one of those before on the pod, but you should definitely follow him if you're not already. And tape wise, he's a bit of a chucker on offense, as I like to call him. Kind of takes bad shots, but more of an offensive player right now, but certainly has the tools to become a great two-way player in the league. And whilst I'm not sold on him, I will note I had him kind of around 35, 36 on my board. So definitely picked him in the range that I thought he was worth picking. Probably more to do with my love for a few guys that were still on the board at that time. And at first I kind of justified it by thinking that he'd probably be a draft and stash guy, but it's been all but confirmed that he is coming over and he's going to be on the roster. So there's probably, if that was the decision, there's probably a couple of guys I would have preferred. But having said that, he's probably got the greatest upside and definitely greater upside than guys like Carter and Brunson, who I was high on. So
Definitely.
a very McD pick, I'll say.
Yeah, it was. It was fun. I think Suns fans are going to enjoy watching him. He's fun. It's exciting. I think Brunson would have been like a little low upside sort of. He's a backup point guard kind of thing. Okobo could be a lot more than that. He could also be a lot less than that. He's a little more of a risk reward. At 31, that's kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, we discussed it at length in other pods. It's the kind of move that you make at that pick, and I'm kind of just surprised. It looks like we're going to have 3 rookies on the roster next season, which is not something that we expected, I don't think.
It makes me think they're going to be trading some of our other young guys and getting some vets in place of them.
It certainly seems that way, but we'll get into that at another time.
All right, I'm going to time you. You have 15 seconds to talk about our pick at 59. Go.
George King came in to work out with the Suns with Diop, Hall, Makura, Metu, and Newman, I believe. He's a small forward from Colorado, 6'6", 3-and-D type, I'll say. So maybe a 2-way contract for him.
There you go. That's for George King. That's probably about as much time he'll play on the Suns that you just heard about him talk. Okay, do you want to get in on any predictions? Anything you're proud of?
I was going to touch on it before. I think we nailed a few of the lottery. Obviously got Ayton and Bagley at the top. Mm-hmm. Then it was kind of in a jumbled order from there. We were pretty sold on Carter to the Bulls, so that was a nice get for us. After that, I think we had Bridges, the Miles Bridges pick sold, and also Troy Brown to Washington. I think we nailed.
That's
as well.
A nice one, because that was a bit out of nowhere to me at least. I was surprised by it.
Yeah, so that was nice because I don't think we got too close on any of our other predictions, particularly because there was no existing players traded in the draft, so a lot of that stuff that we covered kind of got knocked out straight away. So yeah, I think we did all right there with some craziness, particularly because we didn't factor in trades when we did ours. So
I did get one trade related prediction correct. I got Carlos Petri's under. One trade for the Suns.
There you go. You win that one. You win that battle out of the two of us. So well done.
All right, let's ask you. So before we get into the last 2 segments, your retro segment and the 7 seconds or less, where I'm going to ask you some questions. Let's do a couple initial questions. How happy were each of us 1 out of 10 with the Suns draft? Where were you at?
If you asked me when Gambo tweeted about DiVincenzo,
yeah,
probably would have said a 5, just because, and that would have all just been the Ayton pick. Because I was pretty good with Ayton, and as I said, I knew it was coming, so I'd already dealt with it not being Doncic. But the rest of the draft could have been pretty bad after that. With the trade for excitement and Suns' future, I'd say it was probably a 7 or 8 for the Suns, and maybe just under that for the general NBA, because I probably expected a little more action than what we saw.
Yeah, I was saying this earlier. It was actually a surprisingly, and up until all the weirdness past 10 with the weird trades and all the crap Gambo was getting wrong, It was kind of like a top 10 that went pretty chalky.
Yep.
Other than the Dallas trade.
Yep, I agree.
Real quick, I just have the Kellen just tweeted. In his 3 years playing for Villanova, Mikal Bridges went 103-13. The Suns have 119 losses in the last 2 seasons.
That's something that we might touch on in our Did You Know here, Max.
Oh, really? Okay. All right, I'm excited for that. Real quick, I'll just give my ratings. I would have gone with like a 2 or a 3 before the Mikal Bridges thing. Probably up to probably up to a 7.5 or so after 2 picks I liked, both the Bridges thing and the Okobo thing. So much higher.
I'm glad we saved your night a little bit then.
Mikal Bridges, I tweeted it. It saved my night. All right, let's do Retro. What do you got?
Got a bit of a different one. Obviously, we didn't do it at the top this week, and this is kind of a pure reaction pod. But I did want to just touch on the passing of Mike Tulamilo, who I was not really familiar with before that news broke, and he was a beat writer for the Suns. And so I'm just going to kind of run along a few things that I learnt looking into him and trying to learn about him. As I said, I didn't know him that well at all, and he covered the Suns mostly before I was a fan, and before I was old enough to care about reading articles and books about the team, that's for sure. I'm sure most people listening will know, but for those that don't, he passed away recently at the age of 62. He covered the Suns for 16 years, was around during the famous 93 finals, and wrote a book about the team in 96 called Breaking the Rules, a volatile season with sport's most colourful team, Charles Barkley's Phoenix Suns. As I said, I knew very little about him, and there was a Scott Bordeaux piece on him after his passing, which you should go check out if you haven't, which delved a little further into him. But after reading that, I decided to dig a little deeper, and I found an article actually that he wrote about the Suns on Feb 11, 2015, which was a bit of a dive into McDonough actually as a person, and notably was about a week before the Dragic and Thomas trade, which kind of came up again today with the Bridges trade and all the moving parts in that deal. So that's a nice tie in there. But one of the big links is it talks about McD and his link to Boston and his link to Red Auerbach, actually, who he asked for a lot of advice early on in his career at Boston. And there's just a few pieces from this article that I'll pull out, which I think have some nice tie-ins with the draft. So it says, great teams sometimes have a big three: Wilt, Baylor, and West, Kareem, Magic, and Worthy, Bird, McHale, Parrish. At the time, the Suns had a small three: Dragic, Bledsoe, and Thomas. They're the first team to try win with 3 starting caliber point guards, sometimes all on the floor at once. No team ever has tried this, at least not a team whose chief MO is this process, and can it work? Nobody knows, and that's why the Suns are most carefully watched team in sport this year. So I thought that was interesting. I think we're kind of going with an upgrade on that, maybe with Booker, Bridges, and Jackson after this draft.
I would say so.
A different three. I think McDee's maybe changed his view on that philosophy, and McDonough did touch on some advice that Red had gave him early on in his career, and he said that he looks for players who are instigators, not retaliators. He liked guys who initiated physical play, who created an advantage physically, kind of brought the fight to the other team and lifted your team's energy and effort. I think that kind of has Ayton written all over it. Finally, he said, look for high character, unselfish guys who are tough, physical, and play the right way, who care about winning more than paychecks and stats. I thought that was a really interesting quote with the stuff that went on with Ayton before this draft, and then I think it definitely sums up a guy like Mikal Bridges and that kind of winning philosophy. So I thought that was very interesting. And he said in the end of that article, the hardest thing to do in the NBA is to acquire a superstar. There are only 30 teams. There are only so many of those guys. Every team is trying to position themselves to get one. We feel we are well positioned. It's a matter of those guys becoming available. We're still waiting for that opportunity. So, with that in mind, maybe he's kind of over-waiting for that opportunity, and he decided to push one of those assets in today and grab someone like Bridges. So I just thought that was some interesting stuff from a Mike Tulamello article, and RIP to Mike. But if anyone wants to read that article, just reach out to me on Twitter and I'll link it to you. There's some great other things in there other than those things that I read out. It's a long one.
Cool. I like the tie-in. It's great how that tied into the draft.
Definitely.
Okay, let's finish off here with 7 seconds or less. This is the segment where one of us asks the other 3 questions for which the other has 7 seconds to respond and has had no preparation beforehand. Today, I'm asking you the questions. You ready, David?
I'm pumped, and I'm going to try to stick to the time limit this time.
Oh, okay. These aren't too hard, actually. You should be fine. All right, question 1. If you were giving out grades, who would get your highest grade tonight? Team.
Ooh, that is tough. We've already noted that Philly did a lot of things that we wanted to do, and even though I love the Mikal Bridges trade for the Suns, I would probably say Philly.
They had a really nice draft. I'd probably say the same. All right. You can probably guess what's coming next. If you had to give out the lowest grade tonight, who are you giving it to?
I didn't love what the Clippers did. So of the teams kind of up there with top picks and not judging the teams that had, not much to deal with, I'd probably say the Clippers.
Okay, I like that. I would have given it to Miami because they didn't do anything. The hell?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You kind of, I guess you could, grab one of those teams, but you can only work with what you got.
Exactly. Okay, finally, going into next season. All right, so we haven't done free agency yet. We just have the draft. But if I give you over under 33.5 wins for the Suns next season, are you going over or under?
I'm going to go over, and obviously that's kind of predicting what might happen for the rest of the summer. But I think tonight's move with Mikal really shows that the Suns want to be even more aggressive in free agency. So I think there's going to be a team that wins over 33 games next year.
This team is trying to win. I think that's what they told us tonight.
That would be how I would sum up tonight and how I would sum up this podcast, Max.
Yeah, we're trying to win here. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We really appreciate it. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us out. My name is Max McCauley. I am at MaxMCC11 on Twitter. His name is David Nash. He is at the 4 Point Play on Twitter. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Max.
Until next time, guys.